brought to you by LaglessGG. Get 35% off your first purchase by using code CygnusMC or click the link below. On June 20th, JetStarFish uploaded a video where he paid some developers to make a mod that would, in his opinion, fix a lot of issues with Minecraft's exploration. And the community's reaction collectively was to curb stomp him so hard he hasn't uploaded since. And while I think that the reaction towards him was a little bit over the top, he unfortunately became the lightning rod of one of the most hated practices in modded Minecraft: paying for mods. The idea that you have to pay for something that someone else made for free leaves a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouth. Rightfully so, I might add. But on the other side of the spectrum, namely plugins, it has embedded itself as a normal thing, with Spigot's website having a premium section you need to be logged in for you to buy premium plugins, and third-party websites existing as entire marketplaces for these projects. So why is this? And are these paid plugins better than free ones? Well, today let's dig deeper into the strange world of paid plugins. First, some context, and who else to ask this for than my Dutch counterpart, Keesai Sora.
Hey, thanks Lunar. Yeah, so what is a Minecraft plugin? Well, one of the easiest ways to think about it is that a plugin is kinda like a Minecraft mod, but then exclusive to the server side. So while the majority of Minecraft mods are meant to be installed on your client using a mod loader, plugins are Minecraft server exclusive and can only be installed on a server that uses a modded server software to support them. Now, because plugins can't be installed on your client, they are generally deemed as being a bit less powerful because, well, they can't change or modify anything that has to do with your local game. Still, Minecraft plugins allow you to do a lot of cool stuff. Some plugins will add some cool commands to your server, while others allow you to make custom menus. You have plugins that help the moderation team on a Minecraft server to do their job more efficiently. You have plugins that add holograms, plugins that add NPCs, and crazy enough, we nowadays even have plugins that add custom items, blocks, mobs, and so on. And even though you would think that is not possible, because plugins can't modify anything on the client, by utilizing the power of resource packs, a lot more is possible than you might think. And what may be the most awesome thing about Minecraft plugins, you don't need anything installed on your client to join a server that uses plugins. Just pure vanilla Minecraft is fine, making servers that use plugins, unlike modded servers, very, very accessible. And that's it for me. Back to you, Lunar.
Thanks Keesai for that detailed description of what plugins are and what you can do with them. Now get back into the basement with the others, man. The main difference between a mod and a plugin is that you don't need to download plugins on your client, as these are all handled by the Bukkit API's ancient bones. The reason why those bones are so ancient is because of the old plugins still needing to work on new forks down the stream. But the disadvantage that this brings is that some things in the Bukkit API really could need some changes. Luckily, PaperMC has recently hard forked, so maybe there's some change in there. But if they're all coded for the same API that was made by people for free with no monetary backing, how can they justify selling their plugins costing $7 or more on a software that was made for free? Well, for one, have you ever tried coding for Bukkit? You'd wish you were paid by the hour, trust me. And two, well, to put it simply, there are a few things that you can expect when buying a premium plugin for the most part. See, we, or I, are raised to think that the more expensive something is, the better it functions. Your €2,000 iPhone, which is insane, logically should perform better than a $300 Chinese knockoff phone. That makes sense to most of us, right? But in the software world and in many other cases, that's just not the thing. Linux might be a mess to use sometimes, but almost the entire internet runs on it, while it costs you zilch. In the plugin world, this also rings true. Yes, your $9 land claim plugin might look prettier and has lots of bells and whistles and a lot of quality of life features, but grief prevention does the same thing for free, and it is open source. So at the end of the day, it's up to your preference. Literally, the only thing that should be making your decision here is what plugin works for you. And in many cases, it's also just a one-time purchase. But what about version updates? Will you be guaranteed, if you pay, that you get an updated version? Well, in the terms of service of Spigot themselves, they made it very clear that everything is given as is, and thus they have no responsibility if the software you paid money for and you build your entire backend on suddenly stops updating and you need to spend 20 to 30 times the amount you paid on that plugin for a developer to update it. That is, if the plugin is open source, which in many cases they are not. And let's not also forget about security, right? You're managing a server. Remember, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of people with their public IPs and UUIDs stored on your hardware, which admittedly isn't that bad. Your server is full of unique builds like the Spawn that took hard work and in most cases a lot of money because building teams are expensive, holy shit. So you buy the best anti-cheat plugin on the market, thinking you would get support, thinking nothing can beat a paid for plugin that is closed source so nobody can see what it's doing. And then you run it. And then suddenly, after a while, you notice that someone logs into your account. It destroys your spawn area and installed some sort of malware on your server. Plugins with backdoors are nothing new, unfortunately, and because these plugins are premium and thus not usually open source, you can't see what they are doing. It's completely obfuscated. It's important to note that it's also an issue of not many people using that specific plugin and thus issues not getting fixed fast enough. It's not only the issue of plugin A having conflicts with plugin B, as the developer of plugin B doesn't want to spend money on plugin A no one uses anyway just to bug test and make sure that it doesn't conflict. But there are also just security risks that may not have been noticed by 2 or 3 servers, but otherwise would be picked up on if it was used by thousands of servers. But that's a lot of blah blah. Let's just recap this in a nice example. Everybody knows EssentialsX, the essential plugin, yes, that was on purpose, you use to get the basic TPA, home, speed, that kind of stuff into your server. There is a paid plugin that tries to be that and much more. It's called CMI. I used it all the time. It was great for when it worked. With the same features as EssentialsX built in, but it also adds so much more, like portals, kit editors in-game, holograms, and so many more things. It's insane what's actually in here. EssentialsX is free, while CMI costs 15 euros. EssentialsX is updated to 1.21.4, with 1.21.5 on its way, while CMI is also on the same version and is also working on 1.21.5. EssentialsX is fully open source, as it is itself a spiritual fork of the original Essentials plugin. CMI, on the other hand, is fully closed source and has an issue tracker that gets ignored as much as those dishes on your desk. You should really clean up, by the way, it's disgusting. And finally, let's talk about security. While I couldn't find any big issues with EssentialsX on the last few years, and especially not on a regular, well-maintained bucket fork, Purper maintainer and the author of the optimization guide for Purper and Paper servers, You Have Trouble, has informed me of a zero-day exploit as recently as 2024 being found in the library plugin that is used to run CMI. That could allow people to get permissions to run arbitrary console commands as admins. That's scary stuff, but all in all, CMI is not indicative of every plugin out there that's paid. Some have a price tag as a way of just paying for support, with their source being available and buildable for people not wanting to pay for that support, like Ryzen does it. So overall, it's a mixed bag. But let's get to the question some of you might have had the entire video long. Is this even legal? The Mojang user guidelines clearly state that, quote, access to your server can't be limited or controlled directly or indirectly by a player owning or having access to out-of-game content, products, or services, end quote. Meaning you can't have a paid mod on a server that everybody else needs to pay for outside of Minecraft. And during my legal correspondence with the enforcement team, they made it clear stating, quote, generally, we don't have an issue with developers getting support for their efforts. Many mods are more tools for creating and augmenting an experience and are not required to play the game or participate on a server, end quote. Essentially what they're stating here is that if a mod gatekeeps a server, it's not allowed. Though with plugins being entirely server-sided, this is not an issue at all. Most of these plugins are more licensed pieces of software you pay for the support, though that doesn't stop people from taking advantage. On the 16th of August, I made a video on Guardspiggot, a paid server software that costed $75 and promised to be an optimized version of Spigot for 1.19. Except, it turned out that the developers stole the code from a fork named Leaf, added a piece of code that would shut down the server if it detected no license code, and then just sold it on as if nothing ever happened. And this selling was taking place on a third-party website called Buildbybit, which at that point had a reputation of being somewhat shady. But admittedly, they have been trying their hardest to work on that reputation, and I have reached out for comments. If they respond, it will be shown down here.
Hello, it's the editor here with an update. Buildbybit have reached out with a response which is here. They stated that on July 27, 2023, they introduced new policies that server jar creators must adhere to. These include requiring server jars to provide benchmark stats when advertising themselves as optimized improvements over other projects. They also added a new policy that all forks must follow the terms set by the GNU GPL, or General Public License. This basically means that all forks of software must follow the terms set by the original software. So an unobfuscated project cannot be forked then obfuscated at a later date. And lastly, all server jars must give credit to the relevant sources where the code has been utilized. This ensures that every single fork that came before gets the credit they deserve. Buildbybit introduced these changes to combat the developments that the server jar ecosystem was experiencing and were not in response to the original Guardspiggot video, as these changes were introduced before the original ticket was sent. However, once alerted about Guardspiggot, the creator of the project was warned about the new policies introduced and chose not to comply with them. Therefore, the project was taken off the platform. Buildbybit also commented on the claim that Guardspiggot was using stolen code. Quote, Guardspiggot certainly used work from projects that came before it, as has Leaf, as has Gale, as has Paper, and any other modern server jar. The fact that we expect our creators to credit all other downstream server jars in their product listing is a matter of respect towards the hard work that went into creating the projects that they're being depended on, and the people behind them, rather than the licensing requirement. Leaf was MIT licensed, and at least as far as I'm aware, the creator of Guardspiggot was complying with the MIT licensing requirements. End quote. MIT license being another form of licensing that grants permission for anyone to copy, modify, merge, distribute, and sell copies of the software without limitation. Overall, they reported not having any more issues within the premium server jar ecosystem, which is great news. Thank you to Buildbybit for the response, and I'll hand it back to Luna.
With this all out of the way, let's get to some sort of a conclusion. Legally speaking, paid plugins are fine. They don't break the EULA or the guidelines, they don't prohibit anyone from joining the server, but ethically, I personally have issues with accepting closed source premium plugins, as at the end of the day, they are using free and open source software, in this case buckets, to make a living off. And sure, you can say the same thing with 99% of the hosting sphere, and developers getting paid, if they wish to be paid, is an obvious point to make and is important to realize that these things cost time. Time is money. You can't buy time back. You will realize that when you're like me, approaching your 30s, and realize you spent like 20 years of your time playing a block game. But I digress. I can get behind the point of paying for the support and update costs rather than restricting your code and obfuscating it so that nobody else can build it if they want to. But what do you think? Do paid plugins irritate you? Or are you safe in the knowledge that for every paid plugin, there is a free and open source one available with some lesser bells and whistles, but still functional? Let me know in the comments, but for now, I was Lunar, you were very awesome, and I will see you next time. Alright, thank you once again to all the Patreon Pebbles and all the YouTube Pebbles. For $1 a month, you get, at this point, 21 videos, all above 20 minutes, most even an hour, where I talk to other developers, mod developers, developers of games. It's all up there, it's all for you for $1 a month, and you support this show. If you're on the YouTube Pebbles, you get early access, usually like 12 to 24 hours if I get this video out on time, and you get a special channel in the Discord where I am more active. But yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again to Legless for sponsoring this video, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.